So what I have here is a very basic project in REDCap. All we have here is 3 sample patients. There's 2 questionnaires. One's called demographics, one's called survey. Not too complex here. And we're just going to be focusing on demographics because I think this is going to really showcase a lot of the features. In the forms that we're looking with today, it's going to be very basic information: first name, last name, address, age, gender, sexual orientation, a few of these standard questions here for a demographics form. You'll notice that some of the questions contain PHI or protected health information, that's sensitive information that is protected for the patient. So first name, last name, address, anything that could identify the patient. First name, last name, address, email, date of birth, that sort of stuff. But there's also things that don't identify the patient, such as the state that they live in, their age, that sort of stuff, the gender identity, sexual orientation. All of those will not be considered protected health information. But you'll see as we use these user rights, it'll restrict what certain people can and can't see. So we'll talk about that. All right. So starting off, this is the main menu you'll be working with. It's called User Rights. It's on the left-hand side of every REDCap project. Now, depending on your access level to start off with, you may or may not see that option. If you're the one that's created the REDCap project, you will see that option on the left-hand side, or if you've been added as a project owner or a project coordinator, someone with higher level privileges, you will also see the user rights menu on the left-hand side. It is possible if you're just a data entry person on the project, you may not have that option, and you might need to talk to somebody about that, or make a project to play around with it, something like that. Also, one other thing I'd like to note too, just to let everyone know, is that I'm going to try and record this course. The recording is going right now. If questions do come in, your name may be shown on the recording. I just want to put it out there. Typically, these videos are just shown within Cedars-Sinai, but if there's any concerns about that, just you either let me know or something like that, and I'll try my best to hide that. Great, cool. So let's check it out. So I'm going to go to the menu on the left-hand side, User Rights, and I will click on that, and that will bring me to this overview page of all user rights. Okay. And so what we're seeing here is a list of everyone that is involved with the project right now. In some cases, you might just see one name here, whoever the project owner is. In this case, it's myself, and we see that I have a lot of checkboxes giving me access to pretty much everything because I'm the one that created the project. And then I'll also see the rest of my staff here who's involved with the project too, and I can see their access levels on the right hand side, and I can scroll all the way over just visually if I wanted a quick view of what everyone has access to. And so yeah, this will just show the individual rights. We'll go over what most of these will do for each person. And then also, as I scroll down a little bit more, I can see that I have a few groups that are set up for my project. So we'll talk about these groups, how to set up groups, and how to add people to them as well. And groups are kind of predefined levels of access. So for example, there's project design and coordinator, and you can see they have a higher level access than the data entry role. And so you can assign people to these roles and say, okay, I want this person to be data entry, I want this person to be a project designer, I want this one to be a sub-coordinator, I want a statistician, and you can assign them to these groups, and that will automatically give them the privileges that are seen right here. Oh, looks like I might have accidentally started a program. Yes. There we go. Okay. So that's just an overview of what we're seeing here. And once again, this is happening within this user rights menu on the left-hand side of REDCap. This is where I can see everybody who has access to this project. But I'm going to add someone in to the project, and I'll show you the different ways of doing it. So the first option here, where it says add new users in this gray box, I have the choice here to add a new user. And let's see who I want to add in here. Maybe I will add Dr. Suhu to my project. And so as you type in someone's name or their username, you will typically see their name show up in a list here. So depending on who I'm adding, like let me see if I can add somebody else. Let's see. There we go. So if I have Kevin here, and if I wanted to add Kevin, you can see that his name will show up. However, there may be cases where you have people on your team that you know you have their name right, you know that you have their username right, but their name doesn't show up. Let me see if I can think of an example of someone who wouldn't have an account. Maybe, I think, let's see. Oh, nope, he's good. So you can see a lot of people have these accounts. Maybe Stuart. There we go. Okay, so I have someone on my team. His name is Stuart, and his name is not coming up on the list here. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not available to add to the project, but that means that that end user has never registered their REDCap account yet. And that's why their name will not show up. So anyone who's ever logged into REDCap before will show up on this list. Anyone who has never logged into REDCap will not show up on this list. So sometimes you might come across that situation where your staff may not be on this list, and then all you have to do is ask them, hey, just log into REDCap for the first time, and it'll prompt them to set up their account. You can just give them the basic website here, iredcap.csmc.edu. All CEDARS employees have access to this by default, so they don't need to request anything. They don't need to do any special tickets. They just go in and log in with their usual CEDARS credentials. As soon as they log in, you will then see them under this list. That's something that we see come up quite a bit, where people are like, hey, sometimes I don't see the people I'm looking for on my list. It's just because they've never logged into the system before. So you can give them that instruction, and then you should be able to find them. But let me add one of my coworkers here. So I'll say I have Kevin, and I see his name pop up, so I can select his name, and it'll add the username there. And then I have the option to add with custom rights. So I'm going to add him to my project, and I'm going to select his access level, just like such. And now it's asking me, what kind of access should this user have? And I'll go over a lot of the most common ones here. So the first one is an expiration date. So if you want them on the project until a certain time, you can add an expiration date, saying like maybe this person should be done by August 1st of 2023. I could add that in there. But in this case, I'll leave it blank. They'll have indefinite access to the project. And then there's a section for the highest level privileges. Do I want them to be able to add other users like I'm doing right now? Do I want to give them the ability to design the project, make changes to the forms, set up surveys, do that kind of big level or high level changes to the project? Do I want to give them access to that? Do I want to give them access to setting up access groups? And this is useful. This is what we'll be talking about in the second part of the course regarding multi-site studies and assigning people to those multi-site centers. So in this case here, let's say for Kevin, I'm just going to give him actually, I'm not going to give him any of those rights. I don't think he needs any of those. He's just going to be entering data. He doesn't need to be able to add anybody in or make changes to the project. The next section here is privileges for data exports. So this is regarding the identification of data. So right now it's marked as he will only have access to export de-identified data. Now, this doesn't mean that it will restrict him from seeing the PHI or the sensitive data when he's entering that information, but this does prevent them from exporting that data in an Excel format. So they won't be able to download a full database with all that PHI if I mark them as having de-identified access. I could also choose to give him no access to exports at all, so he can't export anything, but de-identified access works for me because they shouldn't be exporting anything with PHI. Only the PI should be able to access that PHI. Then a few other things. I'm not going to go over everything that's not as important or not as commonly used, like organizing reports. It's up to you if you want to give them access to create reports and see stats and charts of the existing data. That's fine here. Can this person distribute surveys? In that case, that makes sense to me. Can they set up the calendar and scheduling? I'll say in this case, we don't use the calendar, so we don't need to give them that. Should they be able to import data? Should they be able to use a data comparison tool? Should they be able to access the log records of your project? Should they be able to access the file repository? That's where like PDFs could be stored. Should they be able to randomize folks? Should they be able to see data quality items? And should they be able to create API keys? So all of these are just giving them permission on should they have access to this or should they not have access to this. That's really the key there. I would say the most important things to keep in mind are these highest level privileges. So I'm not going to, I don't want to go too complex with these, but I say these are the most important, specifically the project design and setup and the user rights. And then also this section down here that asks what is their permission with creating records. Can they create records? Can they delete records? Yes or no? By default, no one has the ability to delete records from a project, even the project creator. So you may not see the option to delete things even though you've already made the project. If that is the case, you can even come in here and add that access level to yourself. So you can give yourself additional privileges so you can delete records from your project. So I'll say in this case, you can create and delete. And then this last section here just is regarding locking instruments or locking forms. And what that is that typically when a PI or when someone reviews the data that's been collected for a patient, they may say that this form is complete and no one else should modify it ever again beyond this point. And then they could lock the record. So it's kind of like in that laminated permanent state. So this is choosing if that person has the ability to lock those records. So it's kind of a really high level privilege there too. But yeah, just for the most important ones, I would say the highest level privileges, and then scrolling down to the what ability do they have to either create or delete records. I would say those are the most commonly used privileges. Okay. Looks like a question has come in that says, is there a way to make it so someone can only enter data and not see other records in the whole project? That is a great question. The only way to do that is to have users enter data via a survey. So you can you can set up a survey that's like the data collection form, and it's a one-way survey that will only take data and never let you see it again once it's submitted. So you can give those surveys to your data entry folks, and it'll typically just be one link and it says, whenever you want to enter data, use this survey. They fill it out, they hit submit, and then they can never go back and see it again. That would be the only way to prevent them from seeing other records. Everything else would, if they enter it and you want to give them the ability to edit it, edit the, whatever they entered, that means they must have access to go back and see, pre-entered records and things like that. But there is ways of setting it up so they can only see their own records that they've entered and no one else's records, and we'll be talking about that in the second part of the course too. All right, great question. So this one more section here is on the right hand side that says data viewing rights, and this lets you choose what level of access they have to each of the forms in your project. So if you have a form that's like 10 surveys long, you may pick and say like, okay, this person gets access to edit and add responses in for demographics, but they don't get access to the surveys. Or they get access to the surveys, but they can only read that data. They can't edit it or modify it or anything like that. So this is actually a really cool way of controlling who gets access to PHI, and I'll show an example of that actually right now. And lastly here, there's once you add the user, do you want to notify them that they have access to the project? Typically, you'll want to notify them. In this case, it's my coworker. He's probably doing something else right now. Doesn't care about this this REDCap stuff, so I'm not going to notify them for this, but typically you want to do that. And then once that's done, you'll hit add user, and that will add them to the project. So I'll add them to the project there. It gives you the confirmation that they were successfully added, and now I see them on my list here. And there's the summary of data that they can see and access all from here. Now let's say I wanted to modify their access level. I can always do that at a later time as well. So here I am again in my user rights menu on the left-hand side. I see everyone's access level here. And let's say I wanted to adjust Kevin. Let's say he actually does need the ability to go in and modify forms. So I can go back in and make that change. So if I click on his name, it then gives me the option to edit a user's privileges. And it brings me right back to where I was assigning those rights. So I can go back in and then select the project design and setup and save those changes. All right. So now I can see that those modifications have been done, and I see it right there. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is using the management roles. So like we see here, there's a role for co-investigator, data entry, a monitor, a principal investigator, a project designer, that sort of stuff. So let's say I wanted to have a new role created, and let's just call it, a project builder. They have no need for data. They just build the project and then they're done with the project, so they're not going to see any data. They don't need to enter anything. And I want to create a role for that so I can assign people to that. So I have the ability here to create a brand new role. And let me add something in there, and I'll call it project builder, something like that. And then I'll hit the create role button to the right. And now it's going to ask me what are the rights, or what access level should a project builder have? And so I'm going to go in here and just click on the things that make sense for a project builder. So I want them to have the ability to design and set up this project, to build out forms. I don't want to give them access to add people to my project. I don't want to give them access to manage groups. They don't need to export any data. They don't need to see reports. They don't need to see stats. They don't need surveys. They don't need calendars. The only thing these people should have is building the project. So I'm unchecking even the ability to create records, no record locking, and then these forms, they don't get access to any of them. So they won't see the demographics and surveys. So I'll create that role, and then I'll have this new section here for Project Builder. So I can add people, once I have the role created, I can add them from this second option here that says Assign to Role. So in the same way I was doing it before, I can type in the user that I'm interested in, and I can assign them to a role. I'm not going to notify them via email, but let's say I want to make Dr. Suhu here a project builder. So I would select his username is going to the project builder role. And it says the user has been successfully assigned to the project builder role. So whenever Spencer logs in, he will only have access to that design. And let's say I wanted to add a few other people there. Maybe I can do another person. Let's see here. I will do, let's do Lilith. And let's say Lilith is supposed to be a data entry personnel. I can just click on data entry there, and then that will automatically assign her as a data entry user. So typically it's going to, if you have more than 2 or 3 staff, it's probably going to be easier just to make a role and then assign those people to those access levels. And then you also know that it's consistent amongst everybody, so you won't forget to click buttons here or there, and everyone will have the same exact access level. Now I want to show a little bit of an example of what this looks like. So in this particular training mode that I have going right now, I can choose to view my page as if I was someone on this project. So let's say for an example, if I change my view to a project builder view. So let's say I was Spencer and I logged into this project here. You'll see that everything that I have access to changes a lot. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that I don't have nearly as many things on the bottom to make changes to any kind of reports or things like that. I don't even believe that I would have the ability to add records. So even if I go to this View and Edit Records button, there is no place to edit a record. I I think, let's see here. So I can see that there's 3 subjects, 1, 2, 3, but once I open up a subject, in this particular role, I can't see any data associated with them because my only role is the project builder. Now, if I was to change my view to, let's say, a data entry person, we'll see everything switch around here. I'll probably have a few more options on the left-hand side. And now that I'm pretending to be a data entry person, I should be able to see those forms associated with each individual. So if I were to go into subject 1, I can now see the demographics and survey forms here, and I can enter data into those, and it gives me that restriction. But it doesn't give me that restriction. But you'll also see that on the top here and on the bottom, I no longer see that user rights menu because that's not part of my role. So I can't add users in. I can't add anybody to the data access groups. I don't have the buttons for project design or the designer on the top because my only purpose is data entry. So depending on what that role is, you can see how it restricts things. And it's kind of really helpful too, because if your role is data entry, you don't want to see things for designing the product. You don't want to see things you can't do or you don't want to be doing. You only want to see the things that it's most relevant to you. So that's what I think is a really powerful piece of this user rights, is that setting it up correctly and setting it up in this way is going to make it easier even for your staff just to get to exactly where they need to be. So if I switch back to my main view here, we'll see that all of my options will come back, and this is like the owner role where you can do everything there. Great. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit. One other thing that I wanted to show, which kind of ties into the next section, is that data export and that PHI protection. So right now, as the owner of the project, if I go to my data exports, reports, and stats menu on the left-hand side, and let's say I do export my data in Excel format, and I download this guy here, I will see that I have all of the data. So let's see here. Great, so here's my sample records, and in Excel, I can see that I have pretty much everything that's PHI and everything for this project. So I have first names, last name, addresses, cities, states, zip codes, emails, date of birth, all that good stuff is all in there. So I have a full and complete list of my patients. However, if I switch my role back over to a data entry person, the data entry folks should not have access to that PHI and that sensitive information. So if I switch now, I'm pretending to be the data entry person. And then if I export that data, and if I do the same thing here, I should now see a smaller list of data. Let's see here. Oop. Uh-oh, maybe the user rights weren't set properly. Let me check again. Maybe they have more access than I thought. Let's see. The data entry person, they do have access to everything. They have access to the full data set. But let's say I did give someone only de-identified access. Looks like Ashley here has de-identified access. They don't have full data set access. And let's say I switch over to another data entry user, and let's export that data again as Excel. And then if I open this up as this user, we'll see that it will automatically strip out all of those identifiers. So on their data set here, even though they've exported everything, they only see the age. They only see, what is your gender identity? What is your sexual orientation? And they have no idea who these patients actually are. So that's a great way of protecting your data from being exported by end users. But let's say you don't want them to see PHI at all. Like, you don't want these external users to see any names. You just want them to see the de-identified information. And a great way of doing that is by splitting out your forms into a PHI only form and an everything else form. So like this here, if I create a form called the PHI form, I can then keep all of my PHI in this first form and then block access to this for everybody besides, like, the PI and things like that. So for example, if I go to my demographics, I'm just going to rearrange all this guy here, this form, so all the PHI is somewhere else. Cool tip, by the way, if you need to move fields between separate forms, there's this little white page with the plus button in it. You can select that, and it will let you move fields to separate forms without having to, delete it and remake it. So I'm just going to go over here and move a couple of these over to my PHI form. So address, going to move that over, just saying I want to move that, into the PHI form. Great. City. I was reading about the PHI and protected health information. Apparently zip code could even be an identifier for folks. Like, let's say, for example, if someone lives in a zip code that only has maybe 25 people in it, that significantly increases the ability to determine who that person is just by having their zip code. I was like, hey, only 25 people live in the zip code. This person is only 1 out of 25, versus a bigger zip code like LA where you would never be able to tell. So I found that interesting. All right, excellent. So I moved all of those PHI elements to the PHI form here. So only the sensitive information is included in this one form. And this is a way that you can really restrict who gets access to this so they can't even see it, even on the data entry side. So I'll go back to the user rights and I'll show that here. So let's say, right now, once again, I'm in this user rights menu. And let's say we took one of our users, let's say Civ here on the top, and I'm going to edit their privileges. So I'm going to go into their account, click edit privileges. And before they had access to everything, but now I don't want them to have access to any PHI at all. So I can give them no access to that form whatsoever, and they only get to see the de-identified demographics and the survey form here. And by doing this, I can limit who gets access to this PHI form. So maybe only 1 or 2 members of my staff gets access to this form, and everyone else gets no access. So they don't have the ability to see any of that PHI. So you can kind of blind it like that, which is really good. And so now that I've made that adjustment, I'll show an example here. So this is my view as the project owner. So I see all the PHI, I see the demographics, and I can go in there and I can review that information. So if I go to this PHI form, yep, there's the first name, last name, address, all that good stuff. And I also see the demographics. But if I switch over to the user that I just modified, you'll see that this PHI form, this first one here, is going to disappear altogether. So I'm changing users right now. It's refreshing the page. And just like that, this user does not get to see any PHI whatsoever. So they can still enter all the demographics, the non-PHI stuff. They can enter everything else in the project, but it restricts them from seeing PHI entirely. So that's a way that you can do that. And once again, that was done just by taking all of your sensitive information, putting it into its own form, separate from everything else. So there's like sensitive information form and then everything else. And then once you have everything in there, you can set the privileges and choose who gets access to that sensitive info and who doesn't get access to that sensitive info. All right, let me see here if any questions have come in. Looks like maybe one of them. Okay, looks good. Great. Okay, so I want to get on to the second part here, talking about data access groups or multi-site studies. So this is information regarding collaborating with external institutions. So if you have a study that is collaborating with, let's say, UCLA, maybe City of Hope, something like that, and you want to add in users from those institutions. So let's talk about that first. So that's the scenario. We're leaving the old scenario behind and moving to this one where now we want to collaborate with external institutions. Let's see here. what am I looking for? This one. Great. So if you are trying to get someone on board from an external site and have them log into our REDCap system and enter data from either their site or just, they're collaborating with us and they need access to our system, the first thing you need to do is create a Cedars-Sinai account for them. So everyone needs a Cedars-Sinai account to access REDCap, and that's what these steps are for. So if this is something that you're interested in, feel free to either drop us a ticket or shoot us an email. And this is the way that you can get someone access to our project. So the first thing is to create an account for them, which is this Service Center ticket here. The second step is to give them VPN access, and the third step is to give them, I think it's Okta access, something like that. Oh wait, no, yeah, one is creating their account, the second one is adding them to the internal system, and the third one is giving them VPN access. All real technical stuff. Don't have to worry too much about it. The main thing is you got to submit these 3 forms for any external user that you want to collaborate with. So I'll send this form out or this document out to everyone afterwards, just so they have it in case it ever comes up in the future. And yeah, that describes the process of just getting someone into our system. So you can get someone from outside of Cedars into our system. Looks like a question has come up here. Let's see. You could also send them a survey. That is correct. So if you didn't need them to have access to our system to make modifications to enter data, you could just create a survey and send that survey out to those external institutions and say, hey, fill this out for any of your patients. That works just as well. And yes, I will send out this PDF to everyone after the course, just so everyone has it. And I'll also be sending out this user rights guide too, which describes a little bit more of what we were going over in the first part of the class, so you can have that. There is just goes over details on how to access the user rights, how to add in folks, and then it also describes what each of these sections are for in detail here. So it's, this is what project setup does, this is what data export does, it's all these definitions here. And I'll send that out to everyone. Great. Okay, and let me scooch that out of the way. So let's say you have contacted these other institutions, you've submitted those forms that I just showed, and you got someone Cedars access, and now they're ready to join our project, and they're going to collaborate with us here. So you'll want to set up these features called DAGs, which stands for Data Access Groups. I am not a fan of abbreviations. No, okay, I guess they use an abbreviation for API, which I also don't like either. But, it's like, how is someone supposed to know what DAGs are? Why do they do that? I don't know. I'm not a big fan of abbreviations, but I'll go to that and let's take a look at it together. So DAGs stands for Data Access Groups, and this is how you can set up multiple institutions within a single project. And the benefit of this is that you can isolate data based on where it's coming from. So you can have, let's say you're collaborating with UCLA and City of Hope. You can have all people from Cedars-Sinai only seeing Cedars-Sinai data. Then all people from UCLA only get to see UCLA data. And then all people from City of Hope only see City of Hope data. So you can compartmentalize your project there. And typically, in most cases, that's going to be what you want to do. In some cases, you might want everyone to see everything. So, in that case, you wouldn't need to use the data access groups, but that's what we're talking about here, is how to compartmentalize this data. So here I am in this data access groups menu on the left-hand side, and on the top here it has the option to create a new group. So in this case here, I want to create a group for UCLA. So I'll put in UCLA and click Add Group, and that will add it here. And then let's also make one for City of Hope. And then to keep things organized, I'm also going to add in one for Cedars-Sinai. So these will be my 3 sites that I'm collaborating with here. So Cedars-Sinai, City of Hope, and UCLA. And once I've had my groups created, I can then add my existing users. So these are all the people that are involved with the project. Let's pretend that I've already added in my external users. Let's say Siv and Lilith and Kevin. Let's say everyone is an external user besides, let's say besides Spencer and Brian. We'll say these two folks on the bottom here are from Cedars-Sinai. And so I would go through my users and assign them to their specific group. So if I added Siv to, let's say, City of Hope, I would click Assign. I would then, let's say, add in Lilith. Let's say Lilith is also part of City of Hope. So I'd go in there and assign Lilith. And then let's say Kevin was part of UCLA. And then we'll add Ashley as part of UCLA. Okay, and then we'll also add in Harold as part of UCLA. And then I'll assign my last two users, Spencer to Cedars-Sinai and Brian to Cedars-Sinai. Great. So now I see on my list, everyone has access to their specific project or to their specific group. And now when these users enter data, they're only going to see data from their specific group. Anyone who's not assigned to a group, like here on the bottom, is currently only me. Anyone in this last group or not assigned will be able to see everything from all groups. So typically, if you are going to use this feature, you want to make sure everyone is properly assigned, except for like the data owners, the data monitors, people who need to see everything from all places. So now for an example that I've added everyone in to their appropriate data access groups, I want to show how that's going to look from their perspective. So let's pretend to be Siv here for a moment, and they're part of City of Hope. So I'm going to switch my viewpoint to Siv. So right now I'm getting this access denied because Siv, their user rights does not let them have access to changing the data access group. So that's why we see here, because that's the last place that I was. And if they try to get access to that, saying, nope, you don't have the ability to do that. But don't have to worry about that. So if I was Siv here, I can add in data. And let's say this is my new subject. And I don't get to see that PHI, but just say I'm entering in someone from California. And then we go through here and select all of our options. And then I'll hit complete. And that will add in my first subject. And then if I added another subject here, I'm adding these subjects into I think it was UCLA, or was it City of Hope? We'll see in just a moment. Okay, and let's say I add two subjects in here. Great. Oh, here we are, City of Hope. So it shows me who I'm collecting data for on the left-hand side here. So right now, I'm entering data into the City of Hope system. And because I'm this user who is assigned to City of Hope, I will only ever see City of Hope data. So if I go to my dashboard, I only see these two participants, the two participants that I've entered. And now, for example, if I switch over to our other user who was part of City of Hope, I think it was Kevin. No, he was UCLA. I think it was Lilith then. I think that was City of Hope. Okay, yeah, so City of Hope here. I'm now being Lilith, or pretending to be Lilith, and I see that I can see my two patients from UCLA. I can add that in there. I can add a new participant in there, so let me add a new person. Okay. Okay. There we go. And now City of Hope has 3 patients that both Lilith and Siv can see. But now, for example, let's say I logged in as Kevin, who is part of UCLA. So let's say I'm pretending to be Kevin now, and I'm coming in here, and now you can see this is now part of UCLA, and Kevin doesn't see anything at all in the dashboard. So it shows no patients whatsoever for Kevin because it compartmentalizes that and keeps them separate. So that's a great way. So yeah, I'll just show one more thing here. If Kevin comes in and enters a form, let's say we have one data entry for UCLA. Okay. Okay. There we go. Great, so now I have one record for UCLA, 3 records for City of Hope, and nothing yet for Cedars-Sinai. So if I come back to myself as the project owner, I can then come through and see all of the different data points here. So now as the owner, like as myself, being able to see everything, I can see all data assigned from all sites. So if I wanted to filter it down some more and see, okay, right now I'm viewing all data. As the owner, I can come in and see, okay, show me all UCLA data. And then it's going to load that up and be like, okay, there's one patient from UCLA. Then there's City of Hope. Let me see all that. Okay, there's 3 patients from there. And then Cedars-Sinai, nothing yet from Cedars-Sinai. I got to get on and be like, hey, why aren't you recruiting folks yet? So that's the ability of data access groups to compartmentalize that data, so that gives that extra level of protection there, and also it kind of cleans it up a lot because UCLA just doesn't need to see City of Hope data most of the time, and the same thing for vice versa. Like the folks at Cedars-Sinai probably wouldn't, it's not as relevant to them to see that data if they're entering their own data. It's just up to the project owners what to do with that afterwards. So once again, all that happens within the data access groups here on the left-hand side. One other method that you can do that kind of touches on the question from before is, can you get the ability for people just to see their own records? And like, let's say just for me, Ed, I only want to see the things I ever put in. And maybe let's say for Civ, she should only see the things that she's ever entered. She should not see anything else from me. She should not see anything else from anyone else on the study, just the stuff that she's entered. And you could kind of do that through this data access group. So you could create a group just for Civ, and you can create a group just for Spencer, and a group just for Ed. And you can assign those folks to their own groups, and it kind of is a way to work around the system to be like, Ed should only see Ed's data, Civ only should see Civ's data, Spencer should only see Spencer's data, and so you can keep that kind of a workaround, maybe a little hack as they would call it these days. So that's a way to do that, to kind of restrict people to their own data and not see anyone else's from the site. But I'm not going to worry too much about that. I see a few questions have come in. Let me take a look at those real quick here. Okay. So a data access group could be made for each site. Exactly. Yep. You'd want to make a data access group for each site. Would the record status dashboard work with surveys as well, or just when working with records? It also... actually, that's a great question. It depends on a few things. Like, one, it depends on who sends out the survey. So if you just have a public survey link that's posted on a website, I'm not sure if this one has. Let's see here. So if I enable this as a survey, so if you are in a project like this with multiple sites set up and you send out this survey just publicly, like if you put it on a website, I believe it comes in without a site associated with it because anyone can fill it out. Let's see here. So if I submit this, close, and then if I go to my dashboard, this is a new survey that's come in, and yeah, there is no survey there is no site associated with this specific survey. You can come in as a project owner, and you can modify who this patient belongs to. So I can say that, okay, subject number 4, I want to reassign their data group, and this is actually a UCLA patient, and I can assign that to UCLA. But that is a manual process. for using those surveys. Now, I believe, though, if you send it out as somebody else, so let me send it out as Lilith. Oh, Lilith can't send surveys. Maybe as Spencer. He's part of Cedars-Sinai. He can't send out surveys. How about Civ? Can you send out surveys? Please, somebody. Great. Okay, so City of Hope can send out surveys. Let me see what happens if we send something out directly to someone's email. So I'm pretending to be a staff member from City of Hope right now. If I send out a survey to my user here, let me see if this actually gets to City of Hope or if it gets stuck as nothing. This is actually a really cool question that I haven't tested before, so that's super exciting. Let's see here. So here's the survey. Let's open that up, and I'll just do test patient 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 test.test.com. Okay, and we get the date. And let's see if that came in as a UCLA record or not. Or I'm sorry, City of Hope. Oh, interesting. It doesn't. Well, I learned something new today as well. Let me just double check here. Aha, it doesn't. Okay, good to know. So surveys do not come in as under a specific site. It's only data that's entered manually. Great question on that. Taught me something. Extra kudos to you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Yeah, so it only works with records, not surveys. The way sites couldn't see each other's data. Is this cleaner than studies? That way, sites couldn't see each other's sites data that has been entered. Is this cleaner than surveys? Typically, if you are working with multi-site, I would say that this is cleaner than doing that, because then people won't need to have to go in and check, who does this belong to, who does that belong to, because they're just going to get a conglomerate of everything coming in down that pipeline. And then if you have, let's say 5 centers, you're going to have these centers trying to figure out what belongs to who. So I would say that using this method through the data access group is probably going to be the cleanest method if you are doing a multi-site study and you want to keep that data separate. There is another method that you could use where when someone fills out the survey, they can check, the participant can mark a box that says I'm part of this site. It won't automatically assign them on the technical level, but at least that's an easier way of filtering out who belongs to you if you are using surveys. So that's another thing. I believe, though, it will also work for follow-up surveys. So once someone has been assigned to a City of Hope group, any follow-up surveys to that participant will still be assigned to that group. So City of Hope, if you start them off in City of Hope and then you send them further surveys later down the line, like a 5-day, a 10-day, a 1-month, 2-month, all of that's still going to be part of City of Hope. It's just the initial survey when the subject is being created before it has a group or anything. Another question that says, can you create a new collector link for each site, or do you need to create a new survey tool for each site? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by collector link. Can you specify a little bit more on that? Let's look at another question that says, can you repeat real quick the part on how to assign full access to a few persons to see all the data from all the sites? Oh, sure thing. Yeah, so if you need people to see all of the data from all of the sites, you just keep them unassigned to any specific group. So let's say an example here, I have Harold, and let's say he's a monitor that needs to see data from all of the sites. I can take his role and reassign them as no assignment. And then that moves them into this category here. So anyone unassigned will be able to see all data from all places. Great question. Okay, so the question came back and says, if you want to track where the surveys are coming from, but you don't need the sites to access their own data. Okay, yeah. So if you wanted to see where the surveys were coming from, but you don't want to use the data access groups to restrict who has access to what, in that case, I would recommend just having a question that either the participant or the end user fills out at the very beginning of the survey, either a multiple choice drop-down menu, something like that. It says, what site are you a part of, or what site are you visiting today, and then just have your options there of Cedars-Sinai, UCLA, City of Hope, something like that, and then you'll call that the site. And so, yeah, when anyone now submits the question, they'll be able to mark that. Cool. All right. And all these data access group levels too does apply to data exports. So people from UCLA will only be able to export data from UCLA unless they're given extra privileges or something like that. But yeah, that covers pretty much everything I was looking to talk about today. So just as a quick recap, what we talked about today is we discussed user rights and how to add people to your project. So if you want people to collaborate with you on your project, you access them via the user rights menu, and then you add them into your project by adding a new user. Make sure that they have if you don't see their name pop up when you're typing it in, contact them and have them log into REDCap for the first time to confirm their REDCap account. Like I said before, they don't need to do any special requests. They just need to log into the system once so their name is registered from this drop-down menu. So if you don't see their name, just have them register. Once they're in your project, you can pick and choose what their access level is, either by adding custom rights or creating a role like we have here and assigning them to a specific role with a certain access level. You can also modify access levels later on down the road if you ever need to. And then we also talked about data access groups, which is multi-site studies and the process of getting people onboarded. So if you recall, if you need to get someone into our system, you have to submit those 3 forms in Service Center for the person that you're looking to collaborate with. I will add those forms to a follow-up email to this presentation today. Once they've been added to Cedars, then you can add them into your REDCap project in the same way as adding anybody else, because they basically have a Cedars account at that point. You would then come to the data access groups level here on the left-hand side, add in any external groups that you want to collaborate with, and assign them to those specific groups so they can only see data from their location. Anyone that is not assigned to a group will have full access to see all of the data. And in order to restrict data, like we were talking about before, if you wanted to restrict PHI access or sensitive data access, you have 2 ways of doing that. Let me go into one of my profiles here if I wanted to choose the user rights. One method is by restricting the ability to export any identified data, just like such here. But if you wanted to make sure that they could not see any PHI whatsoever, we recommend creating a separate form that contains all of the PHI and then giving them no access to that PHI specific form. And they have access to everything else without any PHI in it. So that will prevent that from being inappropriately accessed. Cool. With that being said, that's the end of the course here. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you got something useful out of this. I will be sending up a follow-up email to everyone who registered for the course. That includes the PDF on how to submit access for external users and how to use the user rights. Yeah, and I hope everyone got something good out of this, and thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you for a future course. And it looks like the recording worked, so I'll have that posted later on today. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of the day.